you and I both know as athletes, we like to have an edge. We like to have a chip on our shoulder. So all of the people that pushed back on you early and said, you know what, it was great meeting you. No, don't let the door hit your butt on the way out.
Yep.
It seems like a good idea, but we don't think it's going to work. Did they come back to you? Did any of those come back to you? And then how did you approach those conversations? Because I guess what I'm getting at is when people tell us no, or people underestimate us or undervalue us or don't think we're capable of doing something as athletes, we love to prove them wrong. And part of that proving them wrong is having that chip on your shoulder. How were you able to navigate that water as the success started to happen?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two types in my mind, and I think that honestly, being an entrepreneur that's trying to take a big swing at something, I think entrepreneurship is glamorized in media. We only talk about the successes,
Right.
but we don't talk about the failures or the process to get there. And being in this business, particularly sports, where we're competing with, and by no means are we the MLB, NHL, NFL, NBA, UFC. Don't want to put us on that same playing field,
Yeah.
but we aspire to be.
Right. Right.
But we'll be in meetings, right, where we're going after a brand and they're talking to the MLS, or they're talking to the MLB, right, or our team, and they decide to go there, or an esports league or an esports team. And so there's this weird juxtaposition that I'm in often around um, telling sort of the hard truth about building this versus like the everything's great and up and to the right. And I think what's great is everything is up and to the right from a metrics perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what matters the most.
Right.
But we don't talk about the hardship of it as much, because this business is incredibly complex. I know this wasn't your question, but it has 6 constituencies. Most businesses have 3. They have their investors, if they do have investors. They have their customers, either they're B2C or B2B, and then they have their employees, right? And that's who they service. In our business, we have our investors, we have our fans, right? We have our employees, we have our sponsors, so it's B2B. We have our players,
Right.
so that's 5, and we have the media, we have 6. So every time we communicate anything, we have to think about all these different constituencies, 100% more constituencies than most businesses. I think marketplaces have 4 because they're usually B2B and B2C. So I think that's that creates a lot of sort of inability to be as transparent as probably we want to. But at the same time, it's not because we're trying to be over calculated. It's just because we have to be mindful of perception, particularly around how the media perceives us. And it's not something, it's what creates value at a sports league, at a team. But if I was a B2B software business, I wouldn't have to worry about that as much, right? So back to your question, do I hold grudges, or I wasn't your question essentially, but what do I do when someone said no? I think that life is too long to hold massive grudges. Do Paul and I keep a list of some people that were very, very dismissive? Sure. We think about them and they motivate us. But I think that there are people who weren't part of us at the beginning that have come around and see the work we're putting in. And we know that they have a skill set maybe that we don't have, and we want them to join us. And so I think it takes too much energy to hold those types of grudges or to think about those no's, but they do motivate us. And I think the last piece is around doing why I went on that tangent at the beginning. I think entrepreneurship oftentimes is about proving something. When I was at Dartmouth, and I love the school and I love my friends, particularly my football friends, but the football team was a bit ostracized at Dartmouth. And we were looked at as outsiders. You don't deserve to be here. You only got here because you played football. Right. And so I never had the feeling that I was a dumb jock until I got to Dartmouth. I was always, considered, a smart kid who did well in school and tested well and played football and lacrosse, and then got to Dartmouth and was all of a sudden considered a dumb jock. And probably was because the kids who went to Dartmouth were far smarter than me. But since then, I've always had just chip on my shoulder to just prove those people wrong. And so that kind of continues to course through my veins, back to your point around being competitive.